the room smelled like leather old paper, and something colder, like power, that had already chosen sides. The mahogany conference table stretched the length of the room, polished so smooth, you could see the reflection of every person sitting around it. My brother Greg sat to the left of the attorney Smug in his navy sport coat and smugger smirk. On the right, my sister Elaine, already dabbing beneath her eyes with a tissue she didn't need yet. Across from them, I sat alone. Beside me, my son Adam, 25, quiet, watchful, the only reason I was here. The lawyer, a man with slicked-back silver hair and a voice like dry ice, shuffled the papers deliberately, dragging out every second. I felt it in my chest, the dread, the injustice that had been building for months, maybe years. The unspoken knowledge that this meeting wasn't just about a document, it was a declaration of worth. He began. Robert Charles Whitmore, having been of sound mind and body, left the following instructions to be carried out upon his passing. My breath caught. My fingers tightened around the armrest. Adam gently placed his hand over mine. Line by line, the lawyer went through the allocations. To my eldest son, Gregory Whitmore, I leave the family estate in full, including the lake house and all surrounding property. Greg's jaw twitched in an almost smile. To my daughter, Elaine Whitmore Holmes, I leave the stock portfolio valued at approximately $1.2 million, and my private art collection. Elaine gasped, her hand flying to her chest, like she'd just won the lottery. Maybe she had. I waited, and waited. The lawyer looked down at the next page, cleared his throat. To my daughter-in-law, Margaret Whitmore, he paused, looked up, met my eyes, then looked away. No provision has been made. The room fell into a silence so deep, I could hear the blood rushing through my ears. I didn't blink. I didn't move. Greg leaned back in his chair, crossed his legs. Well, that's that then. Elaine gave a faint sigh. Daddy always said she kept her distance. The lawyer closed the folder. I believe that concludes our reading, he said. But it didn't. Adam stood. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small USB drive. Calmly, he handed it to the lawyer. There's one more thing, he said. The lawyer looked at him, surprised. What's this A message from my grandfather? Dated 2 weeks before the will was changed. Everyone froze. Adam's voice didn't shake. He asked me to record it. Told me to give it to you only if this happened. The lawyer hesitated, then plugged the drive into his laptop. The screen on the wall lit up, and there he was, my father-in-law, Robert Whitmore. Frail, breathing heavily, but lucid, his first words. If you're watching this, they've already betrayed her. People think betrayal comes with loud voices and slammed doors. Mine came in silence, in dinners missed, in holidays skipped, in voicemails never returned. It started after my husband died, Michael, their youngest brother. My in-laws tried to hide their grief under casseroles and cashmere. I drowned in it. I had Adam to raise bills piling like snowdrifts, and no one offering to shovel a damn thing. At first, Robert, my father-in-law, called every Sunday. Need anything, Margaret? No, sir, we're getting by. He respected strength, or at least that's what I thought. Turns out silence can be mistaken for distance, pride for ingratitude. When Adam was 12, he broke his arm falling off a trampoline. I took him to the ER alone. Greg and Elaine found out a week later and were furious not that it happened, but that I didn't call them. She thinks she doesn't need us, Elaine told Robert. She always keeps to herself, Greg chimed in. And just like that, the narrative shifted. They began showing up more, not to help, but to be seen helping. Greg would bring wine to family dinners and mention how some of us are always there for Dad. Elaine started calling Robert daily, recapping every task she completed as if care was a checklist and not a commitment. Meanwhile, I did the real work. When Robert's back started to go, it was me who drove him to the specialist 2 towns over. When his prescriptions got complicated, I was the one sorting pills, tracking dosages, sitting beside him when he cried in confusion. I never documented it, never asked for thanks. That was my mistake. The shift in tone came quietly, like the subtle drop in temperature before a storm. Suddenly, Robert seemed less warm, shorter on the phone, vague, distracted. Then came the talk. We were in the living room. Adam was at school. Robert sat across from me, hands folded. "I've been thinking of updating the will," he said. I nodded. "Of course. That's your right. I just want things to be simple." Something in his tone felt off. "I understand." He looked at me with those tired eyes. "You've always been independent, Margaret. Strong. You'll be fine." My stomach dropped. There it was. The unspoken translation, "You don't need anything from me." I didn't argue. I just smiled weakly and said I always have been. But later that night, I cried into a dish towel while washing the same plate 3 times. The next few months were a blur. Robert's health declined. Elaine started managing his appointments to ease the burden. Greg took over his banking, calling it a security precaution. I was slowly pushed to the sidelines of a life I'd helped hold together. When Robert had his stroke, I was the one sitting beside him through the night. Elaine sent flowers. Greg sent a nurse. And still I stayed silent, because I thought naively that truth speaks for itself. But Adam saw everything. He was 17 when it really sank in. One night after dinner, he said, "They're pretending you don't exist, Mom." I laughed it off. "It's just stress." He didn't smile. "It's erasure." I looked at my son, this boy, with his father's eyes and my stubborn quiet, and I realized he'd inherited more than just our features. He'd inherited our story. "You know who you are," I told him. He nodded. "And I know who you are too. One day, so will they." That one day came quicker than I expected. 2 weeks before Robert passed, he asked me to visit him alone. His voice was weak, his skin papery thin. But his mind was there. "I made a mistake," he whispered. I took his hand. "You're tired. Don't talk." "No," he insisted. "Listen." He told me Greg had rewritten parts of the will under the pretense of efficiency. Elaine had agreed, saying I was well off enough. Robert had signed it in a moment of weakness, more afraid of conflict than consequences. Then he looked me in the eyes and said, "But I see you. I've always seen you. I just didn't say it enough." He asked Adam to come in. "I want you to record something for me," Robert told him. "A message, just in case." Adam nodded, calm and focused. "It won't hold legal weight," Robert added, "but it might hold hearts." Adam recorded him Robert's final words, his real intentions, his regrets. Then he copied the file, saved it in multiple places. He didn't tell me, not right away, but I saw it in his eyes that day. He was carrying something heavy. I didn't ask, I let it be, because in our family, silence was sacred until it wasn't. So when we sat in that law office, when my name was skipped, when the shame they hoped I would swallow rose like bile in my throat, Adam stood. Not for vengeance, not for pity, but for the truth. He changed the game, because I had taught him something they never understood, that strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just waits, then whispers at the right moment. The screen flickered once, then stabilized. There he was. Robert Whitmore, the man they claimed I had no place with. The man whose estate they just divided like slices of cake. But in that video, he didn't look like a man ready to erase anyone. He looked like a man who had carried too much silence and finally needed to speak. He sat upright in his chair, oxygen tube resting just beneath his nose, a plaid blanket over his knees. Adam had filmed him in the sunroom. I recognized the way the light curved over the antique clock on the wall behind him. His voice was hoarse, but it cut through the room like a blade. "If you're watching this, they've already betrayed her." Greg shifted in his seat. Elaine froze mid-breath. "Margaret has taken care of me more than anyone else. She drove me to appointments, cooked for me when I couldn't stand, and stayed overnight at the hospital without asking for thanks. She did it all with dignity." My throat clenched. I hadn't known he remembered. I allowed Greg and Elaine to influence my decision. I was tired. I didn't want to argue. But that doesn't make what we did right. Elaine started to speak, but the lawyer raised a hand. "We're not interrupting a dying man," he said, voice low but firm. "If this will doesn't reflect Margaret's contribution, then let me say it here. She deserved more. She was never the outsider. She was the backbone. He took a long breath. I failed her while I was still alive. Don't let my legacy do the same. Then the screen went black. Silence fell. Not polite silence. Stunned silence. The kind that chokes a room. Greg's voice broke the stillness first. Well, that was touching. His tone was defensive. But let's remember, the legal document is what counts. Adam didn't flinch. You mean the legal document you convinced him to change while he was medicated and vulnerable? Greg's jaw tightened. That's a serious accusation. I have audio too, Adam said calmly. 2 phone calls, both recorded. One where you told Aunt Valerie, "Mom won't fight it. She's too proud. This is our chance to finally lock things down." Elaine gasped. You recorded our calls. No, Adam said, turning to her. Greg did. He just didn't know I had access to the backups on Grandpa's smart speaker. The lawyer raised his eyebrows and leaned forward. May I hear those? Adam looked at me. I nodded. He reached into his laptop bag and handed the lawyer a second USB. The recordings were short, choppy, but damning. In one, Greg's voice was unmistakable. The old man's tired. All we need is one afternoon a signature, and she's out. Dad already thinks Margaret doesn't need the money. We reinforced that it's a done deal. The second featured Elaine. Honestly, she'll be fine. Her house is paid off. Adam's doing well. We're not stealing, we're reallocating. The air in the room turned thick. The lawyer didn't say a word. He simply reached into his briefcase and pulled out a legal pad. This changes things, he said. Elaine burst into tears. You don't understand. We didn't mean to hurt her. We thought Dad would want it this way. We just got scared. I said nothing. Greg stood pushing his chair back with a loud scrape. This is ridiculous. That video doesn't override the will. We followed procedure. But you manipulated a vulnerable man, the lawyer countered. That could constitute undue influence, especially with the audio evidence and a visual statement from the decedent. If this goes to court, a judge may very well rule the current will invalid. Greg turned to me red-faced. You planned this. You used your son to. I stood. Not to yell, not to gloat. Just to end it. I didn't plan anything. I just lived the truth. And apparently, the truth planned itself. Greg stared at me, eyes boiling with resentment. But he said nothing more, because he knew it was over. The meeting adjourned. Quietly, no hugs, no closure. Greg stormed out first. Elaine followed, shoulders hunched like a child being scolded. The lawyer promised to begin the process of contesting the will formally, said there would be hearings. But the tone in his voice was different now. Respect. I turned to Adam as we stepped out into the sun. You didn't have to do all that I said. I know, he replied. But you weren't going to. Someone had to. I smiled. Your father would be proud of you. I hope so, Adam said. Then he added softly, but mostly, I hope you're proud of yourself. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and replayed the video, alone. Just me and Robert's voice in the dark. He had failed me, but in the end, he had tried to fix it. And Adam, he didn't just change the game, he changed the legacy. The days that followed were quieter than I expected. No angry phone calls, no tearful apologies, just silence. And maybe that hurt even more. It was as if, once the truth was out, my family didn't know what to do with me. Without the lie to prop them up, they chose distance over reckoning. I wasn't surprised, but I won't lie and say it didn't sting. Elaine emailed me a week later, a short message. No subject line. I never wanted it to be this way. I'm sorry, no punctuation, no signature. Just words that probably took her hours to write, and me just seconds to read. I didn't reply. I didn't need more words. I needed peace. Adam, on the other hand, became the unexpected centerpiece in it all. His calm presence during the reading, his airtight evidence, his refusal to back down, it echoed through the family like a dropped stone in still water. He received messages too, from cousins, from aunts, from people who had once bought into Greg and Elaine's version of events. Your mom deserved better. We had no idea. Thank you for standing up. Some even apologized to me. Late-night texts, awkward voicemails, a few cards in the mail written in shaky cursive. But I'd already learned that closure doesn't come in envelopes, it comes in decisions. One of those decisions was legal. The lawyer filed a petition to challenge the will, citing undue influence new evidence and conflicting final testimony from the decedent, Robert himself. It took 2 months to get a hearing. 2 long months where I second-guessed everything. What if the judge didn't accept the video? What if the recordings weren't enough? What if it turned into a he said, she said legal circus? Adam never wavered. He accompanied me to every meeting, sat beside me in court, and prepped every document like a junior attorney. It was like something had awakened in him, a quiet protector I hadn't realized I'd raised. At the hearing, the judge reviewed everything. The will, the recordings, the video statement, medical records showing Robert's cognitive decline around the time the changes were made. The handwritten letter Robert left in his desk drawer, unwitnessed, but heartfelt, that Adam had found weeks later. It said only this: if Margaret is no longer in the will, it's because I allowed fear to guide me. And that's not how I want to be remembered. That changed everything. The judge ruled in our favor. The revised will was declared invalid. The original provisions, which had included me, were reinstated. Greg and Elaine were furious. They protested, hired new lawyers, threatened to appeal. They didn't. Because the truth once seen cannot be unseen. I didn't rejoice. There was no victory dance, no celebratory dinner. I walked out of that courthouse hand in hand with Adam, feeling like a war survivor, not a winner. That night, he made spaghetti. Just like his father used to, we sat in the kitchen. No screens, no music, just the clink of forks and the kind of silence that feels like understanding. Do you regret it? I asked him. He didn't answer right away. He twirled pasta onto his fork, took a bite, chewed slowly. Then, no. I smiled. Not even a little. He looked at me. If standing up for you cost me my last name, I'd still do it. I put down my fork. Because how do you respond to a sentence like that? Maybe you don't. Maybe you just hold it like a gift, unwrap it quietly, and keep it for the hard days. A few weeks later, I got a call from Aunt Valerie. She wanted to meet for coffee. We sat on the patio of a little cafe near the lake. She wore sunglasses and a scarf, as if the drama might still catch her in public. She looked older than I remembered, smaller. I owe you an apology, she said after the first sip. I'm not here for that, I replied gently. I know, she nodded, but I need to give it anyway, for me. We talked for an hour, about Robert, about Michael, about how easy it is to believe the loudest voices in a family when no one else is speaking. She reached across the table. You raised a good man, Margaret. I swallowed the lump in my throat. He raised me too in some ways. That fall, I went back to the lake house, Robert's old home. The leaves had turned the air crisp with memory. Adam joined me a day later, bringing paint samples and blueprints. I was thinking, he said, standing in the living room. What if we renovated this place, turned it into a weekend retreat, for us, for friends, maybe even rent it out to families who need peace? I looked around. The house had held so much pain, but maybe it could hold healing too. What would we call it? I asked. Adam smiled. Second Light. I nodded. Perfect. We painted walls, resealed windows, cleaned the attic, replaced curtains. Each task stripped away the weight of what had been and made space for what could be. One weekend, I found an old photo tucked behind a dresser. It was Robert holding Adam as a baby, the same man who had once failed me, smiling with pride. I framed it, put it on the hallway shelf, not as a tribute, not out of forgiveness, but because legacies are complicated, and sometimes remembering it all is the most honest way to move forward. They say legacy is what you leave behind. Most people think that means money, property, a name etched on a plaque. But after everything, after the courtroom, the silence, the anger, the slow rebuilding, I finally understood what Robert left me. It wasn't the house. It wasn't the money. It was clarity. And that's worth more than any inheritance. It came one ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was in the kitchen at the lake house, our house now. Adam was outside repairing a loose step on the deck. Sunlight spilled through the window and landed on the counter, warming the cool ceramic tile. I pulled open the junk drawer looking for a pen and found an envelope instead. Cream-colored, unsealed. My name written in familiar slanted handwriting. I hesitated, then opened it. There were only 4 lines. If I could undo what I let happen, I would. But if you're reading this, it means the truth found its way anyway. Thank you for loving Michael, and for raising the best man I've ever known. No signature, just that. I didn't cry. I sat at the table, placed the letter in front of me, and simply breathed. Because in that moment, I realized something I hadn't been cut out. I had been carved out, set apart, not lesser, not forgotten. I was the quiet constant in a family built on noise. The one who didn't beg to be seen. The one who raised a son who could see what others chose to ignore. Later that week, Adam and I opened the house to our first guests, a couple celebrating their anniversary. He was recovering from surgery. She just needed a break. They sat on the same porch where so much had once unraveled and found peace. We didn't tell them our story. We didn't need to. The house told it for us. Its walls no longer echoed with betrayal, but with renewal. On quiet nights, I still think about Elaine, about Greg, about what they lost, not just the estate, but the chance to stand on the right side of the story. I don't hate them. I just outgrew the space they gave me. Adam said something once as we painted the guest room a soft honey color. Mom, you didn't just survive the betrayal. You reshaped it. Maybe that's what legacy really is. Not what's written in a will, but what's carried in the hearts of those who watched you rise. Have you ever been underestimated, overlooked, or betrayed by people who should have stood by you? Did you stay silent, or did someone speak for you when you couldn't? Tell me in the comments. Your story could be the light someone else needs today. And if this touched something in you, share it. Because sometimes the truth needs more than one voice.